Please repeat after me. I,
Tony Simone,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New York
of the State of New York
and
and
of the office of
the office of
New York State
New
Assembly,
York State Assembly,
and I will pack some groceries according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. I think you're next. You're next.
Thank you, everyone. Hi there. So, 22 years ago, he was working for the controller full-time, getting his master's degree at Columbia. I was 26 years old and dating a guy that was going places. I was imagining quitting my job and starting a life of leisure. And then, a few months later when he graduated, and I was already in love with him, Tony told me that money didn't matter to him and he wanted to help people. There went my life of leisure. But that's okay. That's okay. Witnessing Tony's passion for helping people throughout our life together has been truly inspirational. He would always tell me that he was afraid he wasn't doing enough to affect public people and have a positive impact. And he would always be asking what more could he do. He was always most proud when he was able to help an individual. He would come home at night and tell me about a family whose landlord wasn't providing heat or maybe not upkeeping the building. And Tony would get so angry and he would tell me that he was going to make that landlord's life hell until he fixed the problem. And he did it. And also I remember when gay marriage first passed, there was an elderly couple who was in the hospital together. And their last wish was that they could die married together. So Tony, along with his colleagues at Chris Quinn's office, they arranged for the city clerk to go to that hospital room and marry that couple. And Tony was there to witness it. When he told me the story that night, he cried. Because you see, Tony is gonna tackle the big issues like public safety, affordable housing, and a livable city, but he cares on a personal level. If you have a problem, Tony will do everything in his power to help you, because that's just who he is. And he makes me want to be a better person, and that is why I am so proud to introduce my husband, Tony Simone.
After this, the after party's at Spot Bar at 5:30. And a reception right after this in the other room. But first, I want to thank you, Jason, my husband. I could not have done this without you. I met you over 21 years ago with that big smile from ear to ear. You were my rock and one of my best friends. And I'm so proud that you were part of this journey with me, because you always said you should run for office one day. Even when I doubted I should, you said you should. So I want to thank my colleagues. I want to thank my speaker, Carl Hasty, for being here and taking the time out. I want to thank the infamous Dick Gottfried, whose big shoes I have to fill, I know, but I also have my own shoes. And I love you for all your mentorship and your support, even before the campaign. I want to thank State Senator Brad Hoylman, who's already started helping me mentor me on future legislation that actually affects people's lives, and the great Borough President Mark Levine. I've never seen a more active Borough President. I'm so excited to actually create housing with you. Councilmember Eric Botcher, so many others. Tish James, my general, my Attorney General. Congressman Jerry Nadler, the legend, and I hope you're a Congressmember for a long, long time, whatever the naysayers say. We know you're an effective Congressmember. And Thomas DiNapoli. And to my colleagues, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here with me. You know, I've only been in the Assembly a few weeks, few months. It seems like a year. And, you know, everyone is so cynical sometimes about politics and folks that serve our nation. But if you got to know my colleagues, you would be amazed at their backgrounds and what they've been through and how they overcame that to serve their constituents. You would be impressed, because I'm impressed. And I'm going to mention, and hopefully not forget anyone that's here who may have left, the amazing Alex Borez from the Upper East Side. maybe my future roommate. Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, The Passion, from Queens. My seatmate on the floor, the amazing Brian Cunningham. Assembly member Lyndon Rosenthal, the new housing chair. Assembly member Monique Chandler Waterman. Rebecca Seawright. Stephen Raga. Yuldelka Tapia. Is she here? The man with one of the biggest hearts who I had the joy of hanging out with in Israel, Eddie Gibbs. Assembly member Grace Lee. Jennifer, I always can say Rajukama. And the passionate, I think she was here a little bit while ago, Catalina Cruz. One of my older friends once said, always follow in the footsteps of those who came before you. And one of the very first campaigns I've ever attended, I wasn't even out, and I was so impressed, was Deborah Glick. And Assembly member Joanne Simon, who I often worked with when I lived in Brooklyn for a minute. Harvey Epstein, I think, was here earlier. Assembly member Juan Ardila. Oh, and we cannot forget the infamous council member Gail Brewer. Did I forget any members? All the members? I got everyone? Yes? Okay. And I want a special thank you to Ken Jockers and Hudson Guild for all you do. I will always fight for the residents of NYCHA and Hudson Guild. So here we go. Oh, and I also, before I forget, I want to thank my amazing staff who have been so productive in the first few days. Matt Ty, Ben Lowenstein. Where's Ben? He's tall, you can't miss him. Wendy Pastor, Emma Johnson, Yadira Jimenez, Emma Sackheim. I want to thank I want to thank Tom D'Angora for helping us with the entertainment. The amazing Marty Cummings. Maya Days, you were amazing. I cannot sing like that, you were amazing. So I began my campaign for the State Assembly to build a more livable, safer, healthier, safer city for every New Yorker. But my journey did not begin during this campaign. It started with my immigrant Peruvian mom, who immigrated to New York City and often had many obstacles before her. She was a school teacher in Peru, and she lived a decent life. She did not leave her country because she was poor and facing the obstacles many of our folks today facing, like the asylum seekers. She had an okay life there, but she came to find the American dream, and she met my dad. My dad drove yellow taxi cabs and trucks, but life wasn't always easy for them. They faced terrible landlords, often not having heat, harassment. They could not afford an attorney when often faced with eviction, and one time almost had their house foreclosed. But my family always stuck together and always worked with the community. My dad faced addiction. It wasn't always easy growing up with my father. It was tough being a kid growing up with my brother Rocco. My dad having to help him out of a car, one time having a bad episode with his addiction in front of your fellow teenage friends is not easy for a kid growing up. But he overcame it, and now Liz retired. My mom, they're with us in spirit. They were too old to travel with us today. They were here for our wedding, so I gave them a break from me speaking on and on. But look, they taught me the importance of collective action. So did my grandfather, Tony, who was a union Teamsters delegate. He said, you never do anything alone. You do it in a broad, diverse coalition, and you never do it just by yourself. And like others have said, my wonderful colleagues who preceded me, we have big challenges ahead. We've always had big challenges, but we've always overcame them. We know there's a public safety problem right now and a crisis, a mental health crisis. But fear-mongering and simplistic blaming of others is not the solution. It's an easy way out. There are many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, sometimes even on our side of the aisle, who will simply tell you there's one reason why we have this problem. There's not one reason. But we know the solutions. We've been here before, and we've solved them in the past. I'm going to take on the mental health crisis head on. I've already started with State Senator Brad Harlan and Eric Bottcher and my other colleagues. And I want to say this, and it won't always be popular. You cannot arrest ourselves out of this problem. You cannot jail enough fellow New Yorkers to solve this problem. You need to invest in our communities. And it's a long past due. The pandemic only made it worse. We've always had these problems before. We need affordable housing. We need adequate funding for mental health. Look, if you're a violent offender, you should not be on the street. But don't listen to the naysayers and the fear-mongers that there's only one reason for the uptick in crime. When I worked in the city council with Eric Bottcher and others, we defeated many hate crimes and brought crime down by working with the block associations, many who are here today, working with the community boards. There's not a one silver bullet solution, but we will get there. I promise you that. I also want to talk about affordable housing. For too long, a lot of our neighborhoods, I hate to say it, said, no, not in my hood. No, I don't want that tower. No, 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 no. It's time to say yes. You should be able to live and work in the same district. I know it's hard to believe, but you should be able to live and work on the west side of Manhattan. It should not just be for the playground for the well-to-do and the very rich. Friends should not call me up and say, hey, my rent just went up $2,000 and I make a decent living, I may have to leave New York City. That should not be the case. That's criminal. And that's why, in addition to fighting for real affordable housing, we need to fight for good cause eviction. We need to fund ERAP, rental assistance, to make sure, which Grace Lee is working on very hard to make sure that we fully fund ERAP. But we have to create real affordable housing for the middle class. And we have to create real supportive housing for the mentally ill and those who are challenged and low income, but not just housing, but services. And fully staff them and pay them a living wage. One of the biggest problems we have right now with supportive housing is you build it, then there are no services, and then the folks don't get paid enough, so they quit. And you wonder why we have this ongoing problem. If you want to solve the problem, you need to fund it. If you want to create real housing, you have to say yes. We're not always going to agree on how we do it, but if anything, by the time I'm out of office or whatever happens next, we can look back and say we actually created affordable housing on the west side of Manhattan for every single New Yorker. That's why I'm so proud to represent Community Board 4. I know many of them are here. Leslie Murphy, Jeffrey LaFrancois, who's sick today, but he would have been here too, Jesse Greenwald and others, Paul Schindler, Christine Berthet, and so many others. They presented a real, amazing affordable housing plan. They are bringing us to the yes. And I'm proud to represent such a productive, intelligent, hardworking community board. Because I know working with Eric Bottcher, Brad Harlan, and so many others, we're going to look back in a few years and say how many more units of housing we created and be proud that we actually created for every New Yorker, not just the very wealthy. But we shouldn't fool ourselves. It won't be easy. We also must keep to moving to rehabilitate NYCHA, Fulton Houses, Chelsea Elliott's. No New Yorker should live the way many of our fellow New Yorkers live right now. Broken windows. We're the richest city in the nation, I think almost the world. I don't know what that fact is, but I think we're one of the richest cities. But broken windows, no heat. Americans should be ashamed of themselves, New Yorkers, if you ever did a tour. And right now, they have it in their hands. It's in your hands to create a new Fulton, Chelsea Elliott housing, working with the private sector. And it's in your hands, and your assembly member has your back, Miguel Acevedo, Darlene Waters. It won't please everyone on how we may get there, But we need to create new housing. You should be able to live the same way your fellow New Yorkers in Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen live, in a beautiful new home without all the problems you have now. When I ran, I also said we need a more livable, equitable city, and that includes an amazing public transportation system, which includes a brand new, fabulous Penn Station. And I want to give credit to Layla Logisco from Community Board 5 and other advocates who've been fighting from day one to ensure that Penn Station is developed the right way, not benefiting one developer, but benefiting New Yorkers. Wronging the past mistakes about putting an entertainment complex above a master transit hub. It was a mistake we made long ago when we tore down the original Penn Station, which was a magnificent architectural, what's the word? Gem, that's right, gem. And I think we can do it again. I think we can convince this governor that in the end, we could use state funds and infrastructure funds that the president and our Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who's here before, has passed. The money is there. It should not be used for one developer to benefit. And look, here in New York, we've been a bastion for freedom. I think many before us mentioned it. Attorney General James mentioned it. Chuck Schumer mentioned it. Our rights are on attack in our democracy from every corner of this nation. But New York is defending us against that. On choice, Brad and others responsible for this passed codifying Roe versus Wade in the state constitution to protect reproductive freedom and to ensure that we fund access to reproductive health for everyone. I also want to talk about, I was very proud to last month to vote in favor of the Equality Amendment, which will expand protections in the state constitution for those who seek reproductive rights, but also for the LGBTQI community. It'll be on the ballot this November, so be sure to vote for it. Just last week, I was proud to reintroduce legislation with State Senator Brad Hoyman-Siegel that will protect the safety and dignity of transgender and gender non-conforming students in schools. I see Melissa Sklars, Elisa Crespo of the New Pride Agenda, and other LGBTQI leaders, Dirk McCall and others, and many of the choice leaders here as well. Look, if they come after our kids, including our transgender kids, we have their backs. The other side is scapegoating them because they have no solutions. They only have fear-mongering. So come at our kids and see what you get back. For the sake of brevity, because I'm holding us back from the food and from celebrating today, because everyone knows I love to celebrate, lack of brevity, there are other challenges I won't go into here today, but the climate crisis, ensuring that we get away from fossil fuels, in addition to fighting for health care for all. We cannot forget that Dick Gottfried has championed his entire career to ensure that health care is a human right, and I will never stop fighting for that. So in closing, as we all know, the pandemic only amplified the problems we've already had. These problems weren't new. The issue of homelessness or the mental health crisis, they've only amplified them. That's the reason why I ran. And that's the reason why I will work hard for you 24/7. I will work my heart out for every constituent in this district, not just those who lobby us and the well-to-do, but every single constituent of this district. That's what my grandfather Tony taught me to do. And I often said this during my campaign, which kind of drove Jason crazy, sitting right next to me right here, is that I didn't run for this office for a fancy title. I ran to make sure that I made a positive social impact, improved the lives of every New Yorker, and that we created New York for everyone. Thank you. Now let's get to work.